Wrestlebread podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get a unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 94 of the Wrestlebread podcast. We are getting closer to episode 100, guys, and I'm very, very excited. So I decided to do something special for episode 100. I decided to do an Ask Me Anything session. So whatever questions you guys have for me, whether it be wrestling related, video games, football, nerd stuff, whatever, or about me, I'll take some questions and answer them just so, you guys can get to know, the voice behind the podcast. It's been a very interesting week. We have a new president now. I'm just hoping that all the chaos and the bickering and the left, right, Democrat, Republican crap is over. I know it's not going to be over, but I'm hoping it's not going to be as intense as it's been for like the past year. Whether you are a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter, I don't really care for either guy, politicians or politicians. I just hope that we can be done with this pandemic, that we can get our stimulus money, even though it's not going to be enough for a lot of people who are unfortunately maybe still out of a job, and that we can just somewhat get to some type of normalcy. We also had football as well. I wasn't too in tune with the games last weekend than I was with the wild card round. But I was rooting for Drew Brees to beat Tom Brady because this is Drew Brees' last season. He is retiring, and I was hoping that he was going to win it. Take out Tom Brady, but nevertheless, Tommy Boy went through, and I am excited though for this upcoming games. Where we're at the championship now. We got we have the Bills versus the Chiefs, which I can't wait to see. I am a Josh Allen fan. I think I was a fan of Josh Allen before, like from the beginning when he got drafted to Buffalo, and I've seen like some of the highlights because the Hubs like him too. He was hoping that he would be the quarterback for Dallas, and so I saw some of the highlights. He definitely have kind of remind me a little bit of Tony Romo a bit. Not too much where he's like scrambling and stuff like that. But I am excited to see this game between him and the Chiefs. And then, of course, on the other side, we got Tampa Bay versus the Packers. So who knows? More likely it's going to be Chiefs and Buccaneers, but I am hoping there'll be Bills and Packers because that would be a very interesting matchup to see. Even though, of course, Aaron Rodgers has been to the Super Bowl before, but at least see Buffalo in the Super Bowl again. That would be very exciting for the quarterback and for the city as well. Also, I've been watching WandaVision, and so I only watched the first 2 episodes, so very interesting. If you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. And I see it's one of them shows where you got to pay attention to details, and like I know the Marvel Universe, of course, because of all the movies and stuff like that, but I haven't really watched the TV shows. So there's like little things I'm noticing. And like I said, I'm a DC girl. So I know the DC Universe. The Marvel Universe I know more of now because of the damn movies. Whereas though DC, they really haven't been doing that well in the movies. So I'm trying to like pick up on little hints that I'm seeing. I was watching it with some family and friends, and they were like watching it for the second time where I'm watching it for the first time, and so they was like looking for clues and stuff like that. So definitely interesting. I'm happy that I am checking out another show in between waiting for the next season of Mandalorian, and especially the upcoming season for Boba Fett. So it's been fun. So we have the Royal Rumble coming up towards the end of the month, 1 week from Sunday. And I will be asking people, what is your favorite Royal Rumble matches? I'll be putting out a special episode. It won't be live, but I will be putting out a special episode before the week of the Royal Rumble. Well, technically next week. Just reviewing people's favorite matches, maybe matches that I like as well. I was thinking of either best/favorite matches or worst matches, but I decided to go with, just random matches, whatever you guys are fans of that I will go and check out. So getting into wrestling, we have all seen the news from last Friday that Wrestlemania has been announced. They put out a very nice promo, a very nice video, like news style type of promotion about Wrestlemania with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. I forgot what their names were. Of course, Triple H was wearing a hairpiece. Stephanie McMahon was wearing glasses. Sasha Banks was involved. Roman Reigns was involved. Paul Heyman, of course. And John Cena was involved. And so they announced the next 3 WrestleManias. So WrestleMania, not only the date has changed, but the location has changed. WrestleMania this year will be on April 10th and 11th. And it will be at, I think it's the Raymond James Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. And they're planning on having fans this time. I'm hearing that it could be 25,000 fans, which I am over the moon about. Yeah, the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. And I'm over the moon about that because it's going to be so good to hear a live audience again. Not, people banging on the damn plexiglass or, just saying whatever chant is being told to them, but actual fans that will boo people when they want to boo. If they see Natalya, they'll get up and leave type of situation. Or if they, or they will boo for whatever, and I can't wait because even though it's 25,000 people, I do hope the internationals will still come because they are crazy. They have, I don't know if there's like some type of chat room or anything like that where they come up with these chants that like is so unique and everything like that, especially for Raw after Mania, the chants that they come up with. So I'm very happy that WrestleMania is going to have live fans. It's taking place on 2 nights this year, April 10th and 11th, which is after my birthday. So a lot's going to be happening that week. The podcast turned 2 years old the 5th. My birthday's on the 9th. And then we have WrestleMania on the 10th and 11th. So I'm going to have a whole thing going on that whole week. Because just like WrestleMania, you have to celebrate your birthday at least a week long. And they also announced WrestleMania 38 will take place in Dallas April 2nd, I believe it was. And WrestleMania 39 will take place in LA. So originally, this year's WrestleMania was supposed to take place in LA. But of course, with COVID and everything, a lot of people was worried that we wouldn't be able to, get the WrestleMania in LA, because you can't have WrestleMania in LA, especially in that new stadium, if there's not going to be any fans. So WrestleMania 39 will take place in LA, and I think that's the 3rd. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm planning myself personally to go to the LA WrestleMania. I originally wanted to go to LA WrestleMania when it was announced last year. But of course, COVID, and then I was like, you know what, it's not gonna happen. And so I figure 2 years from now will be enough time to hopefully whatever happens with the pandemic and everything will be completely resolved. We'll all be able to travel. We'll all be able to cram into that beautiful stadium over in LA. I just have to get over my slight fear of flying, especially in airplanes, and the fact that I watch too many disaster movies and know that LA tends to have earthquakes, stuff like that. So I got to get over that before I can get over to LA. But I am planning to go to WrestleMania 39. Some other news as well. Um, Undertaker did an interview with Joe Rogan, and I didn't get a chance to listen to the interview. I know that he went through a lot. Joe Rogan is very good at interviews, so I wanted to be able to watch that interview with my full attention. So if I remember for next episode, I'll definitely talk more about the I'll definitely talk more about that interview. But the biggest thing that everybody's talking about is the fact that The Undertaker said that current WWE product is too soft. Some people may have taken offense to it. I kind of figured without really getting into details what he meant by that. I mean, come on, he was wrestling back in the 80s, 90s, and the Attitude Era where a lot more was open than it is now. Now, a lot of people care about ratings. There's a lot of social media. Things get leaked out easily with social media. Everybody cares about their reputation on social media. And so what he said was, from snippets that I read, that people in the locker room had, guns and knives in their bags, stuff like that. And that, let me see, I'm skimming through what he said. Of what I said, basically, yeah, of course, WWE is more soft than it is back then. I mean, back then, it was blood. You blade yourself. As we got closer to the Attitude Era, a lot of the matches got more hardcore and more dangerous. I mean, we were talking about chair shots. If you want to talk about a match that can make you cringe for how many shots to the head it was, check out the Rock versus Mankind I Quit match. I don't know how Mick Foley is alive with a functioning brain after that match. I remember that match clearly, as many shots that Mick Foley took unprotected, because there was a spot in the match where Mankind had his hands handcuffed behind his head, and The Rock was just taking chair shots to the back of his head. And so there's no way for you to put a hand up to protect yourself from a chair shot. So Mick Foley was taking them chair shots, like, unprotected clean. So people who are upset when Cody Rhodes got a chair shot to the head definitely need to check out that. Ooh, excuse me. Definitely check out that match. That match, it'll make you cringe, and you'll wonder, like, how the hell Mick Foley was okay after that. So yeah, I will agree with Undertaker. The product is a lot more soft in the sense that, for what he said, people care about, what is talked about on social media. He also mentioned that people in the locker room now plays video games versus people having, like, it was a lot more edgier back then. A lot of people were very direct and upfront. And I guess, nowadays it's a lot more team. It's a lot more team building and things like that. So yeah, Xavier Woods took offense, not really offense to it, but Undertaker mentioned how he said that era guys too, those were men. You go into a dressing room nowadays, it's a lot different. I remember walking to my first real dressing room, and all I saw were some crusty fucking men, right? Half of them had guns and knives in their bags. Shit got handled back then, Now you walk in, there's guys playing video games and fucking making sure they look pretty. It's evolution, I guess. I don't know what it is, but I just prefer when men were men. And so Xavier Woods said on Twitter, I wouldn't be the person that I am without the guidance and lessons of a few key people from the previous generation of wrestling. They taught me about the business to save my money, and that having video games in the locker room is healthier than having redacted. Thank you guys. So, of course, back then there were steroids. There was a lot of things going on. Drug use. I mean, it was the 80s. It was the 80s and 90s. I grew up with the whole DARE campaign of not doing drugs, of all the commercials of this is your brain on drugs, any questions. So, yeah, the locker rooms back then probably were a lot more hardcore. People were very upfront and very direct. Said whatever they wanted without any consequences or having to worry about, being canceled, quote unquote, or facing any type of backlash. I mean, there's a lot of jokes that comedians said back then that definitely wouldn't fly that now. So, yeah, I kind of agree with him at that point that yeah, it's not as tense, I should say. I mean, I'm saying this like I've been in the locker rooms, but I'm guessing from what he said and from what Xavier Woods said and from just like thinking, yeah, the locker room probably isn't as tense as it was back then. I mean, back then, we were talking about um, Undertaker was the judge of wrestlers court. So, he's old school. So I'm not surprised that he feels that way. He's an old school wrestler. A lot of people who, from way back then, they prefer things that the way that they're used to, truthfully. Let's see. Going into AEW. We have an announced main event for Beach Break, which is taking place on February 3rd. It's going to be Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Moxley, Pac, and Rey Fenix, which is going to be a very good match. We also have Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa is booked for a match then too. And they also announced that there is going to be a tournament for the number one contender for the AEW Women's Championship. Hopefully this time they won't put it on AEW Dark and instead we actually have it on AEW Dynamite. Hopefully maybe this will be set up for AEW Revolution, but hopefully this will be on AEW Dynamite and it just won't be some type of throwaway type of situation. My biggest gripe with AEW, if you're trying to be an alternative, you definitely got to build up your women's division because WWE is killing it right now with the women's division. And like I said, talent is something that can be learned. I mean, you can learn how to wrestle and you can, with a lot of practice. My biggest example is Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus couldn't wrestle when she first started. When she first started in WWE, her first match, go check that out. It was horrible. And now she's like the face of, what women's wrestling was back then. She was the pioneer. She is who a lot of female wrestlers look up to. So it's something that can be taught. It's just given the opportunity, the trust, the practice, the chemistry. It's just something that's just missing from there. But like I said, I hope that this takes place on AEW Dynamite versus AEW Dark. So going into the shows this week, first starting off with Raw. Raw was up and down. Now I don't know if I read that once again the show was rewritten and was rewritten an hour before the show starts. But we did get an announcement that Drew McIntyre and Goldberg will be appearing on next week's Raw. So, like I figured, exactly 2 weeks, and they gonna be, bringing Drew McIntyre right back out. So they'll be face to face, and we'll see how that goes. But opening up the show, we had Randy Orton, who apparently had first-degree burns, and he was wearing a mask. His nose looked like it was a bad sunburn. I don't know. It didn't... His face, of course, looked weird, but I was very confused. If you have first-degree burns, why are you wearing a lucha mask? I mean, he looked like an extra from Nacho Libre, the movie. So I was very confused as to why he was wearing that mask. Other than that, it was a good promo. And I don't know where they're going with this. But, the fact that we're taking this whole storyline with him and The Fiend, and it's tying all the way back from when Randy Orton had joined the Wyatt family, and turned his back on him and stuff like that. And so I'm fine with that. I'm interested in where this is all going to go, especially with the Fiend. Like, how's the Fiend going to come back? You know, who is the Fiend going to be when he comes back? But of course, he cut a promo about everything that's happened to him, and it looks like his target is going to be the Fiend. I'm very interested on what happens once the first degree burns goes away. Like, is he going to take the mask off, or is he going to continue to wear the mask to become Kane 2.0? I'm not exactly sure. But his goal now, he announced, of course, he will be entering into the Royal Rumble, and that he's going to win said Royal Rumble. And I say okay. There was also like a backstage segment between Bobby Lashley and Riddle, and he mentioned how Riddle was wearing flip-flops or slides, whatever, and so he stomped on Riddle's foot, but Riddle sold the wrong foot. He stomped on his left foot, and then Riddle started to sell the right foot. So, yeah. Let's see. We also had the matchup between Charlotte and Peyton Royce. I still don't understand why Peyton Royce isn't with Billie Kay. We could have kept it with the Iconics. But I am happy to see Peyton Royce getting an opportunity. Of course, I think Ric Flair and Lacey Evans come out to distract Charlotte Flair. I don't know. I'm fine with the storyline, even though, like I said, it's a bit weird that we have this storyline with Ric Flair and Lacey Evans, where, you know, we're supposed to forget that Lacey Evans have a kid and a husband when she was face, but now that she is a heel, it's like, fuck that family, like I had said before. After that, we had Xavier Woods versus Mace. The Mustafa Ali had recorded a promo beforehand. He was saying how Kofi Kingston deserves to be out of action for WrestleMania, and he tied it to when we had Kofi Mania, which actually would never happen if Mustafa Ali didn't get injured. So he's hoping that Kofi Kingston will feel the same way Mustafa Ali did when Mustafa Ali got injured, which I thought was a pretty cool thing. I'm confused though, what are we doing with Retribution if this is since, you know, Xavier Woods is by himself with Kofi Kingston injured and Big E on SmackDown, if we're going to do this storyline with Retribution. Because I'm confused at what was happening with Retribution and Ricochet. They was trying to recruit Ricochet into their squad, so it seems like we don't have anything to do with Retribution. And I am kind of ready for them to break up if we're not going to have an actual storyline for them, if they're just going to be there just to be there. I don't know. After that, we had Asuka. She was at her playground. She invited Asuka, who is going to face her later on that night. And the issue I have is that Asuka is supposed to be a very dominant wrestler. Of course, once she got up to the main roster, she's more silly than she is serious. But Asuka comes in and she was like a bit afraid of Alexa Bliss, which I guess helps Alexa Bliss to kind of show how much of a presence Alexa Bliss has in person. But I felt like there's a way they could have done it. Because Asuka was she was about to sit on a swing next to Alexa Bliss. Alexa tells her that seat is taken, and she starts talking, of course, to the imaginary person who was sitting on the swing. And then Asuka kind of like backs up like very cautiously and was like, okay, I'm going to stand over there. And then they started to talk, and then Alexa Bliss was still talking to the person on the swing and stuff like that. And then there was a part where Asuka had mentioned the Fiend's name, and then she like started dancing with the music and stuff on like that, and it was just I felt as though that segment could have been done a lot better to kind of help out both women. I mean, you have your chance. It's very similar to what happened with Shida and AEW, where Shida is afraid of someone who she faced before, when she was afraid of Avalon. And I feel like with Asuka, they could have had Asuka do some a little bit more than just be afraid, but not afraid to dance in front of Alexa Bliss. They could have had Asuka a little bit more dominant while still being cautious of Alexa Bliss and her antics. I mean, she could have, I don't know. I'm an Asuka fan, so that's why I'm like so puzzled at the way that she is being portrayed on TV. Because like I said, it's not wins or losses, it's about dominance and TV time. And so with Asuka here, she's not really showing any dominance, and she's the damn champion. So she's Asuka 2 belts. I completely forgot about that part. So of course, I forgot how the segment ended, but of course Asuka was like, oh no, yeah, the rocking horse started to move, and then Asuka left. So, and then Alexa Bliss started laughing, and I think they went to commercial. I forgot. WWE is very, very weird with their commercials. We also had Ricochet versus AJ Styles, which I don't know why that Ricochet versus AJ Styles is a pay-per-view type match that we're getting for free. It should definitely be a feud. But nevertheless, we're getting Ricochet versus AJ Styles, which was pretty good, I have to say. It's I forgot how long it was, but it was definitely a very good ass match. First off, Ricochet defeated. I mean, not Ricochet. AJ Styles defeated Ricochet, and AJ Styles did this like it was a very cool transition to the Styles Clash. I should watch this match all over again because it was a very good match. Like Ricochet, I forgot the transition exactly. It was like Ricochet was bounced off the top rope and was put right into the Styles Clash or something like that. But AJ Styles is so talented, and Ricochet is very talented as well. We also had, let's see. Well, we had the dirt sheet of The Miz and John Morrison, and that was a dumb segment. I mean, it was like stupid funny, I have to say, but we saw Gilbert. Gilbert is back, which I popped for, and then we had some dude who dressed up as Drew McIntyre. That part was pretty funny because he kept losing the hair. But overall though, it was a bit of a dumb segment. But the only good thing was Gilbert, pretty much. Let's see. Then after that, we actually had Asuka versus Alexa Bliss, which was a very interesting match. Of course, it started off like regular, I should say. Alexa Bliss was, smiling and laughing and things like that. And Asuka was like kind of taking it to her. And next thing you know, the lights started to go down. And then they went to commercial. I don't know what the hell why we went to commercial. But of course, when we come back from commercial, Alexa Bliss was in different makeup and different clothing. And at first it was like, okay, we went to commercial so that she can change. But then towards the end of the match, when we see Alexa Bliss again, she switches back the footage she switches back to her playful self and then switch back to like her demonic looking self. So I was very confused as to why we threw the commercial in the middle there. But once she switched over to this like more she was wearing dark makeup, black dress. Asuka was kind of like put off. Alexa Bliss was like had no emotion in her face, and she started dodging most of Asuka's strikes. And then Asuka was able to like really started attacking her and stuff like that. And Alexa Bliss was like not really selling it at all. She tried to do the mandible claw on Asuka. Asuka was able to block it. And I think the ending, I think Asuka was doing a bunch of kicks to her and stuff like that. And Alexa Bliss, I think, knocked her down or something like that with a strike, I believe it was, or a forearm. I forgot exactly what it was. But then she picked her up and first of all, the setup for Alexa Bliss for the Sister Abigail took so long. Asuka could have definitely set her ABCs and got out of the move. But nevertheless, for the dramatic effect, the camera zoomed in on Alexa Bliss when she had Asuka set up for the Sister Abigail. Alexa Bliss smiled at the camera and then did the Sister Abigail 1, 2, 3. Alexa Bliss wins, and she started to like wipe her like makeup to smear it, and so she stared to the hard camera, and she was looking like straight into the camera, and the camera then of course is switched to her happy-go-lucky persona, and then it switched back to her, and you hear the Fiend's voice saying "let me in" with Alexa Bliss mouthing the words. So I'm guessing that the Fiend persona is possessing Alexa Bliss. It seems like that's what it is. That it is the Fiend possessing, quote unquote, Bray Wyatt and possessing Alexa Bliss. It definitely is giving me like a horror movie plot type of thing. So, but I think it was cool. Overall, Raw really wasn't that bad. They had its good spots with Asuka and Alexa Bliss, of course, Ricochet and AJ Styles. But overall, it was okay. It was nothing to like go wow about, I have to say. Going into AEW Dynamite, AEW Dynamite really wasn't that good of a show. It started off really good. And let me see, the main event was fine for me, but overall, it really wasn't that good of a show, I have to say. We started off with the celebration of Brody Lee Jr. -1's birthday. He came out with the Dark Order. They had a cake and stuff like that. Brody Lee Jr. was wearing his dad's ring coat, and it was a very fun segment. Of course, John Silver said it's going to be an extra special day because a certain cowboy is going to join the Dark Order. And then Luther comes out with Serpentino, and Luther mentions how he doesn't like kids, and so he's going to destroy Brody's birthday. And then that leads to an 8-man tag match of the Hybrid 2, Luther, and Serpentino, or the Chaos Project, I should say, versus the Dark Order with Hangman Page. And so it was a fun segment. They sang happy birthday and stuff like that before he came out. During the match, Luther comes outside the ring with Colt Cabana, and he was about to powerbomb Colt Cabana into the table with the cake. Brody Jr. hits Luther with the kendo stick, distracts him, and Colt Cabana then, of course, slams him into the table with his face going into the cake, of course. And afterwards, of course, the Dark Order wins. the match. And then we lead to them asking Hangman Page to join the Dark Order. And and Hangman Page mentions, like, no, he said, I was recently in a group and it didn't work out, but he had a lot of fun hanging with them. And it was kind of sad because, Hangman Page was definitely like battling things. If I remember correctly, he really didn't do too much wrong. He just did a lot of damn drinking. And was just like not really caring. He was like feeling numb and stuff like that with things going on. And not only was he kicked out of the Elite done pretty much split up, especially with what's going on with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. But yeah, it was kind of sad. But overall, that segment, it was really good. It was a really fun segment to celebrate Brody's birthday. Of course, at the end, he had cut a promo and he mentioned, I forgot who he bopped. I think it was Serpentino he bopped with the kendo stick too. And then he looked at the Dark Order. He was like, "My birthday was 3 days ago, you idiots." And so I was cracking up at that. And it's some people who had a problem with it. They feel as though that they're, taking advantage of Brody's death by using his son. And to that I say, you probably haven't been watching wrestling that long. There has been so many segments of family members being involved in wrestling. First of all, the kid lost his dad. Wrestling is something that he's very passionate about, obviously. And so, with the permission, of course, of Brody's widow, Amanda, obviously she was ringside with Nolan. The kid is having the time of his life. If I was going through a tragedy and people are trying to help me out going through the tragedy by trying to make sure I have the most fun and I'm surrounded by people who care about me and want to make sure there's a smile on my face, I would definitely go through with it. And if I was Amanda, and I would probably do the same thing. If it's something that can make my child feel better and to make him smile throughout this whole tragedy, I will definitely do it. And so I don't see really anything wrong with that. It wasn't like Brody was in a match. He was ringside. He was in it was pretty much somewhat a backstage type segment that he was involved in. Is he going after the AEW championship? No. Was this taken away from someone else's opportunity? No, because it was helping out the Dark Order. It's putting over the Dark Order. So I don't really see why there's a problem. I remember full storylines with siblings and family members who's not even wrestlers. Ken Shamrock comes to mind with his sister Ryan Shamrock, who had a full-on storyline with Val Venus. I remember that. What else? I mean, we don't have that many segments with kids. I mean, of course, there was Nicholas who won a damn title. Now, if you have something to be upset about, you can talk about that, because it was a 10-year-old kid of I think it was a referee who won the title at Wrestlemania and then turned around and had to give up said tag team titles. So if you want to be upset about that, I can see that, because that opportunity was taken away from someone for a WrestleMania moment. What else? There was Dominic, of course, who was involved in a very intense storyline with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. The whole family was involved there. The whole family of Rey Mysterio was involved with the ongoing storyline with Seth Rollins and Murphy. The McMahon family, before Stephanie McMahon was even like an official of WWE, was involved in a very long storyline that involved The Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness. So if it's being used in a good way, like with Brody, why not? It's definitely putting over the Dark Order. It's not really harming anyone. Like I said, what else? I feel like I'm missing something. There was a lot of storylines of people who weren't really wrestlers. Dusty Rhodes, who had Sapphire. She wasn't a wrestler. She was a fan, and she pretty much became his sidekick, and that was a whole thing as well. If it's something that works, it works, and I say do it. So with Brody -1 doing this whole thing with the Dark Order, it works. It's very wholesome. It's a feel-good moment, with everything that's going on with Brody's death, the damn pandemic, all the craziness that was going on with politics. I say I don't have a problem with it. Now some people had an issue because the Dark Order is kind of coming off comedic. They were a bit of a comedic group anyway, before Brody Lee came along, and they became a lot more serious. And there's not really a way for them to kind of get that back, honestly, because it was Brody Lee's character who kind of like kept them in line. Now I don't know if that's what they're going to try to do with Brody Jr. I highly doubt that. But I kind of figure it's going to be a bit comedic anyway to kind of make people laugh. But we'll see. We'll see how everything turns out with the Dark Order. After that, we had Cody Rhodes versus Peter Avalon. Didn't really know the point of this, really. Cody mentioned that he beat Peter Avalon in a minute. Peter, of course, said no. And it was almost over in less than a minute. Peter Avalon ran right into a crossroads, and music played, and Jade came out, and I thought Shaq was coming behind her, because I was like, we already seen him on AEW Dynamite. What's kind of the holdup of him actually appearing? Hopefully he went to the same wrestling school that Pat McAfee went to, and not come off with some weak-ass wrestling moves like Snoop Dogg. I'm gonna come at Snoop Dogg for that. Not even a splash. That was a drip, and not the good type of drip. That wasn't a frog splash, or whatever he was trying to do off the top rope. That was a driplet. That was a drop. That was a drop on a tadpole. Okay, that's what that was. And so I'm going to come at him for that slam. And I probably can't do a frog splash, I'll admit that, but I'm not the one who went out on TV and did it. So, it's all fair game. But I thought Shaq was going to come out behind her, but nevertheless, she was just standing there posing with her muscular self. Avalon hit a low blow, and then she walks off stage, which I was a bit confused about that part, because I would figure if I'm coming out to distract, I'm going to stay out there. Of course, Peter got a bit more offense, and it was a little bit more back and forth, but of course, nevertheless, Cody wins. Peter Avalon's going by Pretty Peter, or Pretty Face Peter, or something like that, I don't know. I'm glad that he has a different gimmick than the librarian. But now he's Pretty Peter, and so Cody went to did the figure 4 on him, and was about to slap him, and that's when he decided to tap, because he didn't want Cody to slap him in the face and mess his face up. So it's like, okay, I mean, I don't really get it, but I don't know what we're gonna do with Peter Avalon. I don't think Pretty Peter is doing it, but who knows. So after that, we had Jon Moxley versus Nick Mortal. I butchered that last name, I know. Komoroto, I think. Who they said was on AEW Dynamite. He has a very cool look, I would say. He's a big guy. And so of course Jon Moxley wins the match, but it was a good debut for Nick. And it seems like they're gonna have him officially probably on AEW Dynamite a little more often. But it was impressive for him as far as a debut on AEW Dynamite. After that, we had Private Party and Matt Hardy versus Top Flight and Matt Sydal. This match really wasn't that good, and normally tag team matches in AEW are tag teams in AEW are really good, especially Private Party and Top Flight. But with this match, it was a bunch of botches, and so it wasn't. It had its moments with the high flying and stuff like that, but it was just like so choppy, not smooth at all with these botches, stuff like that. I really didn't enjoy it, and I kind of tuned out a little bit anyway during the match. There was a bit of a showing that Private Party may be turning heel. Isaiah Cassidy had used the chair and Mark Quinn kind of like looked very surprised and this pretty much was like, okay, whatever it takes. And he went and did a shooting star press for the win, which he has a very nice shooting star press. But it was okay. Matt Hardy, he kind of comes off a bit of a Vince McMahon type of character. If I really had to think about it with the contract agreements he was talking about, and then he mentioned no third party, no Twitch or anything like that. And then there was the spot too, I just thought of it, where they got confused at who the legal man was. And it's like, you guys have been wrestling for quite a while. Even if we're talking about just AEW, for you not to make these type of rookie mistakes. And I remember when Private Party first came to AEW, they were so good. And I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's just the chemistry with Top Flight or something like that. But it wasn't a good match at all. After that, we had Penelope Ford versus Layla Hirsch. And this was a good match. I mean, they had a bit of more of a storyline with Miro, Chuck Taylor, and Orange Cassidy that it was more attention to. I was kind of interested on what this whole Butler thing was going to be, but I guess we would have to wait for like backstage segments or something like that, because it was mainly just Miro just bossing Chuck Taylor around, telling him to admit to Orange Cassidy that he doesn't have any best friends. But Orange Cassidy really doesn't show emotions, so that part of the segment really didn't do much for me. It would have been a lot better if it was Trent that was there versus Orange Cassidy, because we would at least had gotten some type of reaction from Trent to that. But as far as this women's match, the women's match is good. Layla is very impressive, and I'm very happy that she is there. If I remember correctly, she has a background in amateur wrestling, and so with that, just like everyone who has a background in amateur wrestling can pull from that and kind of get better in the ring. So I'm hoping that she is one of the female wrestlers in AEW that just gets better and better over time. Penelope Ford is very fun to watch, of course, because damn. And I feel as though she could get better too. I mean, she's still a bit off with her moves. She does like a lot of gymnastic and acrobatic moves. And there was a few spots in this match where you can see that Penelope was kind of waiting for the spot to happen. And I just hope that, the women can just tweak that a little bit more so it's not just very obvious that you're waiting for the next spot. And I noticed that happens with some of the women's matches. Then we get to the main event. Before that, I'm just remembering, we had the whole segment with the Young Bucks and Don Callis. The Young Bucks, first of all, Alex Marvez on the scene, just appearing out of nowhere, like a true paparazzi / like tabloid journalist is. The Young Bucks were just on their way to Kenny Omega's house because they were supposed to have a meeting or something like that. Alex Marvez was there with the cameraman, of course, and he walks into the house with the Young Bucks. They was looking for Kenny Omega. Michael Nakazawa was there. He kind of like looked a bit like a butler, and he was talking like very calmly and trying to be like very professional and everything like that. And so they walk into Kenny Omega's house. They're looking for Kenny Omega, and they see this this painting. It was Kenny Omega and Don Callis. Neck up, everything was all good. But then we get to the rest of the picture. And Kenny Omega is shirtless, ripped and stuff like that. A little bit, very ripped. And then he had his pants very low. But then we had Don Callis, who was just as ripped as Kenny Omega, with pants a little low too. And it's like, you need to go on Maury and take a lie detector test, because that was a lie. And so of course they pointed that out. Then Don Callis comes and it's like, oh, you like the picture? Being such a complete dick, but it works. He's like, oh, you like the picture? Yeah, I got that for Kenny Omega for his birthday. And the Young Bucks was like, for his birthday? He's like, yeah, I got it for his birthday. What did you get him? And he was like, his birthday was in October. He's like, yeah, but it's never too early or too late to give a present. And so they mentioned how they was trying to get in touch with Kenny Omega and how they was trying to call him. And he was like, oh yeah, what number do you have? Because I had Kenny Omega change all his numbers, with friends and stuff like that, popping up on them and stuff like that. He needs to like get rid of it basically. And so they was like, oh, okay. And so they went back and forth and stuff like that. And Don Callis mentioned for Alex Marvez and the camera guy to be taken to the dungeon, which is apparently some type of wrestling type thing, which is very similar to the dungeon from the Hart family. That's what I kind of took it as. And so the cameraman puts the camera down. Of course, the camera is still rolling. And it was very, and this part kind of reminds me of Impact, when the cameraman kind of like peeks around the corner and like zooms in to catch whatever conversation is going on backstage. And they was going back and forth, and the Young Bucks was getting very upset because they can see clearly that Don Callis is being a snake. And I think they were very upset, and it kind of like insinuated that they were attacking Don. And so we get back to the arena a little bit later in AEW Dynamite, and Alex Marvez once again sees Kenny Omega, follows him into the locker room, and Don Callis is talking to him. Kenny Omega's like, oh, do you see my outfit? Blah blah blah. And so he noticed that it's something wrong with his face. And he's like, oh, what's on your face? And Don Callis is like, oh, my glasses, this is my glasses. And so Kenny Omega was like, who did that to you? And he was like, oh, I didn't really want to say who did it, stuff like that. And then, of course, he throws out the Young Bucks. And Kenny Omega goes, the Young Bucks? So, of course, now we're seeing that, of course, from what we've seen from the previous week, Don Callis is using his snaky skills to kind of break up the Elite, kind of bring Kenny Omega, over to his side, because he finally has the kid that he, watched grow up and stuff like that. It's finally champion, and it's finally on top of the world. He wants to make sure that that kid who is on top of the world is under his wing. So he's taken away all his family and friends, stuff like that. I don't really know how to feel as far as Kenny Omega being duped into all of this, that he's like coming off not really naive, but just not really paying attention to it. That he is just really like, all he cares about is the fact that he is champion. He is being the collector and stuff like that. So I don't really know how to feel about it. I don't know where we're leading this storyline to. If this is going to carry on to lead to, head to head at Double or Nothing, or if this is something if this storyline is going to last a little longer. I feel as though it was a little too early for Don Callis to start showing that he's a snake. But I guess it had to happen since we have the Young Bucks who kind of like showed they were on the same side as Kenny Omega. Because like I had said before, the Young Bucks are technically a face, whereas though Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers are heels, as far as with this storyline. So I guess to preserve the fact that the Young Bucks are still faces, that we would use Don Callis to kind of like act like a snake. Tony Khan was over on Impact as well. I watched a little bit of Impact, so I couldn't really give that big of a recap of what happened. But Tony Khan was sitting ringside, watching what's happening. So I don't know if we're gonna have Tony Khan versus Don Callis. Not really in a match, but pretty much a rivalry between those two at some point. I'm not exactly sure. But I feel as though I don't really know how to feel about Kenny Omega being like duped or being like naive and like being played. So, but I'm gonna let it play out. Like I always say, I'm gonna let it play out. I'm gonna see where this all goes. See where it goes from here, because there are times where your friends can pretty much play you and convince you that one thing is going on when it's actually something else. So, but coming to the main event, it's MJF and Chris Jericho versus Santana Ortiz versus Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager. This was a fun match. This was only about 15 minutes or something like that. And this one also had a bit of botching as well. I of course was hoping that Santana Ortiz will come out on top since they're the actual tag team, but of course this was going to be about MJF and Chris Jericho. But this was good. This was good. Of course, Santana Ortiz had a lot more chemistry than the other two teams, of course, because they've been a tag team for a lot longer. But it was just, just kind of seeing where this all goes. But I wish that Santana Ortiz were the ones that would be able to go after the title versus MJF and Jericho. But like I said, overall, it wasn't that good of a show. It had its ups and downs, but just overall, it really wasn't that good of a show. NXT, I had checked out. NXT was better. We have Beth Phoenix, who is back in action. And, of course, we had the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic that was going on as well. I didn't really get a chance to check out the bracket for the women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, but I did see the first match, and I have to say I was very surprised that Toni Storm and Martinez had lost. My only issue with the Dusty Rhodes Classic is that it's more about the people who are thrown together than it is the actual tag teams. The only issue I have with WWE is that instead of actually grooming actual tag teams, they rather put together tag teams of singles wrestlers. So with the Dusty Rhodes Classic, I mean, you get people who are teamed up that you normally won't see, like Samoa Joe and Finn Balor. But it takes away from tag teams who are actually tag teams. Now, of course, there are very, very rare instances where it works. For example, like Sheamus and Cesaro the Bar, that tag team worked very well. The New Day worked very well. What else? Even the League of Nations had worked very well. The Shield came on the main roster as a tag team. So did the Wyatt family. But I mean, like, people who's been wrestling on the main roster for a while, or NXT for a while, and they're being put into a tag team. That's the kind of a frustrating part. They could have used this opportunity to kind of bring in tag teams that could have been introduced to us. So starting off, we had Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory versus Kishida and Leon Ruff. Like, for example, that's a team that was, like, thrown together and isn't... Actually, both of these teams thrown together and not actually a legitimate team. I mean, an exception could be made for Austin Theory and Johnny Gargano because they actually were teamed up, kind of like buddy-buddy before the Classic came about. But Kishida and Leon Ruff won the match. This NXT was a better show than AEW Dynamite overall. I didn't really expect for Leon Ruff and Kishida to win the matchup, but that's exactly what we got. But Kishida had pinned Johnny Gargano clean, so I'm going to assume that this is leading to a future shot for the NXT North American Championship. After that, we had Karrion Kross versus, I don't even know who it was, but Karrion Kross, I cannot wait for the takeover to have fans. Oh my gosh, because we never experienced Karrion Kross's entrance live. Yeah, when he came to NXT, it was during the pandemic, and so we never seen the crowd reaction to Karrion Kross's entrance. I'm hoping everyone learns the words, so when the entrance happened, everyone is singing along with Scarlett. I don't know what the hell Scarlett was wearing. Her outfits are definitely out there, but I love it. She was wearing some type of shit on her head. It was a mix between like Passion of the Christ and like Queen of the Damned type of situation. It was a squash match, of course. I don't even remember who the person was. But it was basically showing Karrion Kross being dominant until he eventually goes after the NXT Championship again against Finn Balor. But, another squash match it is until the feud begins. And then we had another match of the Dusty Classic, Imperium versus Lucha House Party. How many of us sung along with the Imperium theme? I'm very happy to see them back. The interesting thing is, what a difference a brand can make. The Lucha House Party on the main roster is a bit different than the Lucha House Party on NXT. And I really thought about that. I was like, when the Lucha House Party first came to NXT, a lot of people were very excited about it. Let Lucha House Party come out on Raw. People kind of roll their eyes about it. But Lucha House Party NXT is a different story. Same team, different reactions, different displays of the team, or different ways that the team is being shown. And I realized it's because when it comes to NXT is about the wrestling. It's not really it's not really too much comedic. Not a lot of comedy. it has comedy, but it's not like over the top type of comedy that we would have the Lucha House Party on the main roster. The Lucha House Party will come out with the fucking piñatas and shit like that. Whereas though in NXT, they can actually be presented as luchadors, which is who they actually are, instead of, just dancing around. So of course they brought out moves that you probably really didn't see too much before. And so I'm really happy that the Lucha House Party is in NXT, because it's more about your fucking wrestling versus if you can cut a very good promo, or can you do this funny backstage segment. It's not too much about character. And that's why Apollo Crews in NXT is a lot different than Apollo Crews on the main roster. Apollo Crews was able to get away with his gimmick because it's not really about the gimmick, it's about the wrestling. You can have a basic gimmick in NXT, and if you're good in the ring, it works. Whereas on the main roster, it is nothing but your gimmick. Your gimmick has to be not really over the top, but definitely kind of larger than life type of situation going on. But the Lucha House Party, like I said, was pulling out fucking moves, and I was very happy to see it. Of course, Imperium, being Imperium, but the Lucha House Party won, and I was a bit surprised about that, because I thought it would be the Undisputed Era versus Imperium in the finale, but we're not getting that. But I'm happy for the Lucha House Party though, and I'm happy that this was a very good match. So we get the Women's Dusty Classic. It's Carter It's Carter and Kazano versus Storm and Martinez, Caden Carter and Casey Catanzaro. Yeah, Catanzaro, Tony Storm, and Mercedes Martinez. Now, like I had said, I kind of thought that Tony Storm and Martinez would win the match. So I was a bit surprised that Carter and Catanzaro had won the match. But nonetheless, this is basically a setup to show Io Shirai, who I love, of course, and her versus Tony Storm. Give me that money, please. She comes out and starts attacking Martinez on the outside, and then that's how Carter and Catanzaro had gotten the win. Let me look up the bracket. And like I said, I didn't really get to see the actual bracket, but I saw it wasn't really that many teams. Okay, so we have that matchup. Aaliyah and Jesse versus Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. I already know who's going to win that. Candice LeRae and Dee Hardwell versus Gigi Dolan and Cora Jade. Shotzi Blackheart and Amber Moon versus Marina Shafir and Zoe Stark. I did hear that oh my gosh, what's the other name? Jessamine Duke. She isn't appearing in this Dusty Bros Classic teaming up with Marina because apparently they don't have plans for her to be teamed up Marina as anyway, but she's doing things for she's doing content for up down down from what I read. But it just feels like they just didn't want her teamed up. That's kind of what I felt. So it doesn't really seem it's not a lot of teams as it is with the men. I felt as though this definitely could have been an opportunity for them to bring in more women. I mean, there's a lot more women in NXT that they could have used, but I guess we have to start out small, especially since this is the first ever anyway. Probably easier just start off with just 8 teams and just kind of go from there. After that, I didn't get a chance to see Bronson Reed versus Tyler. I know that he is teamed up with Malcolm, and they keep doing these like backstage interviews with Malcolm giving him like some type of like motivational advice or whatever. And I didn't even get a chance to see these. Apparently there was another segment after that featured had Legado del Fantasma, Lucha House Party, Drake Map. It was like a bunch of segments, but I didn't get a chance to see that, but I heard that was fun. But I did check out the main event, the NXT Fight Pit, Tommaso Ciampa versus Timothy Thatcher, which very unique matchup. I think this is the first ever Fight Pit matchup that I've seen ever, and I think it was the first one that this is definitely the first one that NXT did. I have to say that. But the rules, I didn't even catch the rules. It was something. It felt like that would have been pinfall or submission or something like that. Anyway, and I didn't even get a chance to look up the rules either. So if there's like extra stuff to it, I don't know. But the match, of course, was physical and brutal. And I'm very happy that Timothy Thatcher won. He definitely needed this win because Tommaso Ciampa didn't really need the win, truthfully. This should have been something to kind of like put over Timothy Thatcher, especially because he's very good, with the technical like submission stuff like that. He knows how to manipulate the joints and stuff like that. And it felt like at the end after after Tommaso had tapped out. They kind of stared at each other, and it felt like we was going to get like that moment of respect, but we didn't really get to see it anyway. But Timothy Thatcher definitely needed the win. I don't know where they're going to go from here, if they're going to continue on this feud between Tommaso and Timothy Thatcher. Very interested to see what we're going to do with Tommaso Ciampa, because he seems to have done it all. Finn Balor already has enough people going after his title with Kyle O'Reilly and Karrion Kross, of course, and even Pete Dunne. So that stage is kind of filled up. Do we want to see Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano again? I mean, as good as the feud is, I feel like that card has been played a lot of times. And I'm happy to see Kishida going after the North American title as well. But overall, this was an okay week, I have to say, of wrestling. And we have SmackDown coming up. Of course, what we're going to see next from the Tribal Chief, the head of the table. I gotta look. I kind of forgot what happened on SmackDown. I know we are. Oh, so now we got the switch up. Adam Pearce. It was the contract signing, and Adam Pearce signed the contract, and so did Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, the Tribal Chief, wanted to sit at the head of the table, but he didn't want the chair that Paul Heyman gave him. He wanted Adam Pearce's chair. And so he made Adam Pearce get up out of his chair and sit in a different seat. And so Adam Pearce signs the contract. He goes up the ramp slowly, and he starts acting injured. And of course, it was the swerve. So everyone take a deep breath. Calm down. I said, let it play out. You know, we don't know where this is going to lead to. And of course, this leads to Kevin Owens coming out to take the place of Adam Pearce, because Adam Pearce is an official and he can replace himself in a match. So everybody calm down with the whole, but it's okay, you know? Even though we're getting Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns again, I know a lot of people want it to be Shinsuke Nakamura. But Shinsuke Nakamura got his own theme back. He's a face, okay? So we got what we wanted, one step at a time, you know what I mean? It's SmackDown, so we can be okay with this, but one step at a time. Nakamura is now face. We can all sing along to his song. He can come out, you know, be his king of strong style with his massive ass swag that he's walking around with. And so Shinsuke went against Jey Uso. Of course, he wins. And I'm waiting for Jimmy Uso to come back. And I'm really, really, really hoping maybe this will lead to a Wrestlemania thing with the Usos. But I'm hoping Jimmy Uso comes back in the Royal Rumble. Jey Uso's in the Royal Rumble. And one or the other eliminates the other. And we set up the feud. Uso versus Uso at WrestleMania. Let it happen, please. Oh my gosh, that would be such a good match. What? Uso versus Uso? We never got that before. And like I always say, family versus family matches is always on point. Look at Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, Mania 10, okay? A lot of family versus family. Except fucking for Brie Bella versus Nikki Bella. That is one of the matches. That is one of the feuds that we do not acknowledge. We don't talk about that when I'm talking about friend versus friend, family versus family. That's one big ass motherfucking exception to that. But Jimmy Uso versus Jey Uso will be so good. That is WrestleMania worthy. I'm telling you. And if it's not, I'm going to have a big ass egg on my face. And I don't think I am. So I think that I'm right about this one. But that's what I'm hoping it is. Now, as far as with Roman Reigns, of course, there's a lot of names being thrown out there of who he will be going against as far as WrestleMania. If it will be Shinsuke Nakamura, Daniel Bryan, The Rock, of course, gets thrown in there a lot. And I say, who knows and who cares? It's the tribal chief. I'm hoping, I slightly hope he doesn't lose the title anytime soon. But if he loses the title to Daniel Bryan, it'll be a slightly different story, because he can continue as the tribal chief as long as we get back the Planet's champion. That was a very good character gimmick, I have to say, the Planet's champion. I was very close to getting the t-shirt. Let's see. Don't know what's going on as far as with Rey Mysterio and Dominic, if Dominic is wrestling anymore. I didn't even check to see if he was like injured or anything like that. We also had the Ding Dong Hello with Bayley and Bianca Belair. A lot of people is hoping that Bianca Belair will win the Royal Rumble. I'm kind of hoping too. Bianca Belair versus Asuka, or if she goes to NXT, or if she goes after oh damn, who's the SmackDown Women's Champion? Oh shit, I forgot who's the SmackDown Women's Champion. Sasha Banks. Jeez. Or if she goes after Sasha Banks, which I think will be a very good feud as well. Maybe not promo versus promo, because Bianca Belair isn't as good on promos as Sasha Banks. But once we get into the ring, that'll be a completely different story. We also had Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro, which, that's another pay-per-view type of match. I knew it would be. Of course, it was very good. A lot of people still have hope that Cesaro will get his champion shot. People feel as though that has passed years ago. All I say is anything is possible. If fucking Kofi Kingston can be in wrestling 11 years, and then when he gets his title shot, is the biggest fucking thing at WrestleMania, to the point that they had to change plans for it, anything is possible, okay? There's a big fan section for Cesaro. I am a fan of Cesaro. I felt as though they should have teamed him up with Paul Heyman when they did back in 2014 at that Raw After Mania, and they could have stuck with that, but for whatever reason, we didn't get that. I think that would have definitely shot him to the moon. We had Apollo Crews versus Sami Zayn with Big E sitting ringside and hit on a couch. Very Velveteen Dream-like, with a Christmas sweater, it looks like. And so they were going back and forth. It seems like we're going to turn Apollo Crews heel, which I'm kind of hoping that we do, so that way he can stop the fuck smiling and actually kind of have a bit of a personality and a gimmick. And like I said earlier, NXT, I probably wouldn't have that big of an issue with it, even though I slightly knew you kind of need some type of personality or some type of gimmick or some type of character. Who the hell is Apollo Crews besides the guy who's really good in the ring, can do standing moonsaults, stuff like that. So hoping that he turns heel so that we can get something out of him. But not only WWE did one better. They put him with the tribal chief. Motherfucking Apollo Crews is in the island of relevancy, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just appreciate that for the moment, that the tribal chief took time out of his day to sit down with Apollo Crews and tell him, hey, this is what the fuck you need to do, okay? You need to get a little bit better. Like, I don't know exactly what Roman Reigns was saying to him. I mean, he was kind of in and out, especially with things there was people coming in, Paul Heyman was talking to him, stuff like that, and he was looking at Apollo Crews like, see, this is what you gotta do to get things done. And I'm like, yes, Roman Reigns, you tell him. And I was a bit upset at Apollo Crews because he didn't have a pen and paper in his hand, because when the tribal chief is talking to you, your ass take notes, okay? You take notes, all right? A lot of us who have been in school, been in college, can definitely teach you how to take notes, how to work, write shorthand and stuff like that, so that you don't you don't forget anything that's being said. You should have had a tape recorder in your hand to record what the tribal chief was telling you, because these are life lessons, okay? Not all of us get to learn from the tribal chief. Not all of us get to sit in the island relevancy that the tribal chief is giving you. Tribal chief is giving you time out of his day to teach you something. You need to take notes. Watch it back. Study some film, you know? This isn't just any old type of advice. This is advice from the tribal chief. He's the one, as big as his damn family is, he is at the top of the mountain. He's at the head of the table. I would love to see, I wish they did a segment around Thanksgiving showing Roman Reigns at home with his family at Thanksgiving and his ass sat at the head of the table. Now, of course, they couldn't do it because of the pandemic, but I wish, you know, I wish they did it so we could see Roman Reigns at the head of the table with all his damn family sitting on the sides of the table, looking at him sitting at the head of the table. We'll see what happens with SmackDown. Of course, we're going to get Roman Reigns' response to what Adam Pearce did to bring back Kevin Owens. We'll see if Apollo Crews will learn what he was taught. If Roman Reigns is going to give him a pop quiz or something like that, we don't know. But very interesting SmackDown that is coming up. So that's it for the Wrestlebread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Let me give some shout outs. Shout out to Julianne Rob Bass from Wrestling Court Podcast and AttorneyMinds.com. Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show. Chris from We Talk Next Podcast, which is featured on the Keita and Jay Show. Nando and Larry from Half K Podcast. Devin Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling, and my boys over at Powerbomb Jitsu. There's a lot of other podcasts I'm going to start mentioning next week. I just don't have you guys on the list, and I don't have you guys in my rotation as far as like listening on a weekly schedule, so I will be announcing some more podcasts for you to check out as well. Coming up next week, there's going to be a special episode of me giving a review of certain Royal Rumble matches. So if you're listening to this episode before the next episode, episode 95, let me know what your favorite Royal Rumble match is. Let me know what Royal Rumble match you would like for me to check out. There is something on WWE Network. They put together the best Royal Rumble, the actual Royal Rumble matches. So I was watching Royal Rumble 1997, which was a very interesting year. Of course, it was all about Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was when it was him versus Bret Hart going against each other. And we had the fake Razor Ramon and the fake Diesel. And we had Ahmed Johnson, too. If you don't know who Ahmed Johnson is, because I feel so old because there are people who I know, and I realize that there is a whole fucking generation that have no idea who these people are. If you don't know who Ahmed Johnson is one of those people. He had a very good body, and he was very confident in his body. He would be one of those dudes that will wear Daisy Dukes, muscular and everything, masculine, wear Daisy Dukes and make your ass feel uncomfortable, okay? Definitely check him out. I mean, he had injuries, stuff like that, but always felt like he should have had a title shot. He should have been champion. But he was the first African-American to win the Intercontinental title, I think it was, or a singles title. I forgot what stat I read about him. I might be completely wrong about that, because I think that there were people before him. But he definitely was pretty good back then. But it was very interesting to watch the Royal Rumble 1997. And as crazy as it might seem, this was back when Stone Cold's theme would hit and the crowd wouldn't pop, because this was back when Stone Cold like really started to come together. And of course he was a heel, but he wasn't really cheered at that time because this was before WrestleMania 13, when he would become very popular in his matchup between him and Bret Hart. Yes, that was WrestleMania 13. And that was the infamous Bret Hart versus Stone Cold, where we got the double turn, where the heel became the face and the face became the heel. And if you never ever seen a very good double turn match, that is the match you definitely should check out. And that was also the WrestleMania where Undertaker won the championship, if I'm not mistaken, from Psycho Sid or Diesel. Not quite sure. I think it's that one. And he was wearing the Great Glove stuff. I might be completely wrong. Not going to have enough time to look that up, but I may be completely wrong. But yeah, coming up next week, I'm going to review some Royal Rumble matches. I'm also going to be back here next Thursday live, giving a recap of all that happened on Raw, Dynamite, and NXT as well. We're going to see the go-home show for the Royal Rumble, and so I will be giving my predictions of who I think will win the Royal Rumbles and all the matches that will be going on after that. So, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to hop on Twitter and follow me at Jaydee Talks. That's Jaydee Talks. And follow the podcast at Wrestlebread. You can also find the podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know your thoughts. And until next time, guys, peace.